I love a beautiful wreath at the front of my door, and today's video is going to be focusing on 12 wreaths that you can do on your front door all throughout this year with the supplies that come from the Dollar Tree that keep them all on budget, looking high-end and beautiful. All right, friends, now let's get crafting. I am taking all of these different florals, a mixture of past spring florals with some of the newest florals, to really cut down on the price. Now, this color theme is so fun, where things are starting to become a little bit lighter from the cold weather outside. It's got that frosty look. Now, I have a couple different ways I like to do my wreaths. First, on this wreath in particular, I'm using a zip tie and I'm bringing together 3 of this peonies from the Dollar Tree, and I'm clustering them in 5 clusters. And then I'm coming back in and I'm also going to zip tie on bundles of these peach carnations, as well as this newer sprig from the Dollar Tree that has these beautiful peachy and white leaves. It's got that frosted look. Then I'm going to start to fill in these pink roses. I thought these all came together so beautifully. And then this boxwood as well from the Dollar Tree. I was so impressed that the Dollar Tree had all of these new floral picks this year. Another thing I added in were these white berries. These are all year long. You can find these at the Dollar Tree. And then some of this fall grass. I thought that this pop of green and yellow in here was perfect for this wreath, and it really got that look I was going for. And then the last thing I added in were some of these, I don't think they're black eyed Susans, but they're little sunflowers that are white, and it has the really dark brown center of it. I love that little pop in there. Now this completes the look. What do you think? This DIY, we are going to be using this heart wreath form and then some fabric that I have on hand. But anybody that has fabric on hand, this is a really cute one to try, because I'm sure if you're crafty, you probably have a bunch of fabric laying around, or you can even use old clothes that are getting ready to go out for donations. I use things like that all the time, even a sheet. You can use an old fitted or top sheet. You can also use that to be able to cut up and make one of these with. So this project is super simple. You saw that earlier I cut a little slit into the fabric and then I ripped all the way down so that I can make a whole bunch of these little rags, which is why it's called a rag wreath. And I'm going to just simply tie on the most neutral color that I have first. So I have a lot of this tan taupey color. I'm going to go all the way around the whole heart form. Once I've completed going all the way around, it's going to look like a hot mess at this point. Even when I was doing it, I was like, I don't know about this project. Maybe this should not be something I'm showing. And even my husband walked in the room, was like, Heidi, that's a bit of a mess. But at this point, I went to the next light color, which was a creamy white, and then I started adding in the pink. This is where it is super important to get the shape. You're going to take your iron that you have at home, and you're going to iron down these pieces in the direction you want them to go. Then, to make sure it doesn't shift over time with it being wherever you place it, I'm adding little bits of hot glue here and there to kind of keep things clustered into the right shape that we want to keep the wreath from looking like it's starting to look sad over time. But the honest truth is as these wreaths get older and older, they just get prettier because it's meant to look very shabby farmhouse. And I just love it so much. So you can see on one side I've completed all the pink. Now I'm coming over to the other side and I'm adding in more. So I'm just pulling down the tan spots and then I'm adding in some pink. And I really wanted the tan to be the primary color with a little bit of pink. As I kept adding in more, I just kept ironing things down into place. Now when you get to the top is probably the most crucial part to make sure you get that part right. But again, this is really easy to do. It just takes some time to do because you're sitting here playing with it and fussing with it until you get it the way you like it. But when you get to the top, you want to make sure that you can see where it dips down and you can see where the arch of the heart is. So I'm really playing with the shape of this adding in some hot glue, and then I'm going to flip it over on the back side and pull down around the pieces that are looking like they're sticking up too much. And then I'm going to take my iron and really flatten them to come down on the side like they're curving around the heart. At this point, it's looking really good. I played with a couple more little pieces just to make sure you can see the definition of the heart at the top. And then I decided it would be so pretty to add on some wooden beads. Again, I'm going to link these down below in my description box if you're interested in them. You honestly could use anything at the top. Then once you've got whatever you want to be able to hang this up on it, tie it onto that form and then hang it up somewhere inside or outside your home. I would definitely recommend inside, probably more than outside. For this DIY, we're going to be using foam core board, foam squares, and some florals of your liking. All of my supplies are from the Dollar Tree. Now we are going to start by sketching on the letter for our last name, our monogram, and then we're going to cut it out with an X-Acto knife. Once that's all cut out, you're going to take your foam squares and start cutting them down to fit around the shape of the S. They don't have to be perfectly spaced on that foam core piece, just as long as you have something for your florals to be able to go into. This has such a high-end look, and these monogram wreaths are so expensive. We're going to make this for just a few bucks. Then I'm going to take my greenery and I'm going to follow along the shape of the S, making sure I don't compromise that shape, so that way it looks like the letter. So continue to fill in all of your next floral that are small, and then after that keep filling it in with all of your bigger florals until you have completely covered those foam pieces to make it look like the shape of the letter of your liking and your last name. Once you're all done with that, flip it over and add a piece of rope or twine to the back to be able to hang it up, and you're ready to display. Our supplies today are going to be these carrots from the Dollar Tree, this raffia, a wreath ring metal wire form, and some fabric that you can pick up at any of your craft supply stores. I got mine from Joann's, used a coupon, and the way I like to cut this is by making a little snip at the very top and then ripping all the way down. Once I've gotten enough long strips, I'm now going to make them a little bit smaller. I'm going to cut them down to about 4 inches long. You can do them as long or as short as you would like, but once you've got enough of them, you're then going to start tying them onto that wire wreath form. And I think this is just such a pretty look. Now this particular wreath is called a rag wreath, and what you're doing is just tying on all of those little rag strips that you just ripped all up. And you're going to just go all the way around until you've completed the whole thing and filled in. Once you have, you're going to go ahead and take your carrots and you're going to place them the way you would like them to look, as if they are sitting out in the garden or in a grassy patch. And you're going to just hot glue them on wherever you choose to put them. I really liked moving them back and forth in different directions because I felt like it made it look more natural, flowing, versus just kind of putting them all in one direction. And then to complete that farm fresh look, I'm going to take that raffia, tie a giant big bow, and then I'm going to make sure that I just kind of stretch it out into the place that I want, so that way the bow doesn't collapse, because raffia is wound really tightly in the bag. So just make sure you play with it a lot before you settle on that look, and then hot glue it all into place. Wreaths are one of my favorite things to make because you can do this for such a more affordable price than paying these super expensive prices that stores charge for these. Now all of my supplies are from the Dollar Tree, except for some fabric I'm going to pull in a minute, and an extra greenery garland that I get from Hobby Lobby. I buy the really long garlands when they're on sale. you can see me right here zip tying it on. So I used the really whimsical, wispy greenery from the Dollar Tree, and this part right here, the thicker leaf, that one is from the garland. I just zip tie them all on so it's nice and covered. And now I'm going to come in with these yellow sunflowers from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just going to continue to just fill them in. Wherever I find any openings, any holes that I don't want to see, I'm going to take those leaves that were also on the same stem, the pick for the flower, and I'm just going to glue those into all those spots. Now I'm taking this beautiful striped fabric. I actually found it on a trash day. Somebody was getting rid of this huge, gigantic bolt roll of fabric. I could not believe it. I think the person was just not knowing what to do with it anymore and they wanted to get rid of it. I was so excited. I picked it up. It probably has about 20 yards on the roll. I felt so lucky to snag it on that day. So now I'm just putting the tails on first, and then to strengthen the loops of the bow, this is how I work with fabric. First I double up the fabric, and then I'm going to fold it in half one more time, glue it at the end, and then create a zigzag and add some hot glue. Fluff up the bow and put a little clamp to hold it down. So I'm going to do it one more time. Put some glue at the end, zigzag it at the bottom where it's got a pleat, add in that glue to hold it in place, and then clamp it down. And you can see here that it really does make the most beautiful loop, and you would never know that this was done with fabric. Now I'm going to come in and I'm going to just glue on those loops where I want them to be. And I just have so much fun doing this part because I love a big loopy bow on my wreaths, and I'm using fabric. It's just such a fun possibility to work with fabric and creating a beautiful bow for your wreaths. So I hope you give this tip a try. I ended up picking up some of these florals from the Dollar Tree, one of their largest wreath forms. I think it's 24 inches. And then this is what drove the price up just a little bit. I got one of these long garlands from Hobby Lobby, and well, it's not a coupon anymore, but it was half off, so it was $12.99. And then you can see some of these picks I had on hand. I'm just going to use some little sprigs here and there. And then I actually used 4 packs of these lemons. And then I didn't show it, but I had 2 long skewer sticks, and that's why the price was driven up on this wreath. But again, it's still so much more affordable than what the inspiration was. So now I'm going to take the garland, and this is the greatest way to get greenery around on your wreath. I'm just going to zip tie it all the way around, and I love how this greenery looks, which is why I went with this one. And now I'm going to come back in with these peonies that they had at the Dollar Tree. I'm just going to bring in that wire long enough to be able to loop it around that joint where the zip tie is. And then I'm just going to lock it right into place with some hot glue. Then I come in with some of it's kind of like a buttery yellow rose that the Dollar Tree had at the beginning of spring. Then I brought in some daisies and then some of these wispy yellow florals. I thought these were so cute and so dainty, the way that they would just blow in the wind on my front door. And then I brought back in that long floral here that you see me sticking in. I got these at Hobby Lobby a long time ago, and I just am forever like cutting off little stems of it. And I'm just going to add that down in there, and I always like to secure everything with a tiny little dot of hot glue. Now here comes that dowel stick or the skewer stick, where I'm just cutting it down because I want to make sure my lemons don't fall off of this wreath. So I'm just going to poke it in there and hot glue those into place. That way it has something for the hot glue to lock onto, because these, if you try to put hot glue on the lemons, it's too slick of a surface. It will just come right off over time. So I'm really always a big fan of making sure when you make something, take the time to make sure that it's actually locked into place, so that it doesn't pop off. So I put 3 clustered together. Now on the inspiration you'll see that those are kind of scattered around with the roses, but I really liked this look. And again, just because you find some inspiration doesn't mean it has to look exactly like it. I think that's the fun part about crafting, is you have a jump off point and then you can make it look however you want. This DIY is super simple. I'm going to use this foam wreath as well as this red and white stripe and this blue and white star ribbon. Now I found these ribbons at Joann's. They had these on clearance, so I got each one of these for about $1.50. So I could not believe the price of these ribbons, because originally I think they were like $6 or $7. And the sale that they had was so phenomenal. I actually picked up quite a few of them for the future. Now you can see that I'm just simply ruffling on the ribbon. The only real tip I have about this is when you come around the back side, you don't need to ruffle that because that's going to be leaning up against a wall. And then the second tip, when you transfer to the blue and white star ribbon, pull back the red and white ribbon, and then you're going to ruffle going all the way up into it to make sure you have a nice clean line so that the ribbons transition from one ruffle to the next. And then you're going to cut off that extra, glue it down into place, and then pull the red ribbon back down. So that way that blue ribbon tucks up into that first ruffle row that you did. And then I will say one more thing, I think it is important. I like to hold the wreath up and look around to see if I see any of that green foam popping out. And if I do, then I'm just going to take some glue and just put a little dot and push down the ribbon to make sure you can't see that green foam. The last thing you're going to need to do is just add on some kind of a twine or a ribbon to be able to hang it up and tie it on in front of a mirror or a wall or even your front door, and it just has such a beautiful impact for the 4th of July. "14-inch wired wreath form," this bag of apples that I picked up from Amazon, some fabric, this burlap ribbon, and then a whole bunch of green florals from the DT. Now I'm going to take that ribbon and I'm going to just coil it around that wreath form, because this is going to allow me an easier way to be able to put on all of these picks that I'm taking apart, to glue it onto something to have a nice sturdy base. You don't have to do this, but this is just another technique I thought that I would try and share with all of you, and I actually really liked it a lot. So I went ahead and just tucked underneath all of these wispy, which is always the first one I like to put down. I like to put down the most flowy, wispy looking greenery pick first, because it really makes it look more natural to have those out at the very back of the wreath. And then I keep building out from there, going into the smallest things. So now I'm putting on, I think it was called Fall Grass. I think that's what this pick is called. I loved it because the majority of it is green and it goes into yellow at the very end. It's not an actual flower head that you could just like pop off. It's one big greenery pick. I loved it. So I wanted to make sure I got that on here too. And then now I'm going to come in with these berries. And I used the leaves as well, because I always like to try to use all of the pick. And I put down the leaves and I glued them onto the ribbon to conceal the ribbon a little bit more. And now I'm coming in with the berries and I'm just tucking those and laying them as flat as I can, because these are a little bit tricky to work with sometimes. So just lay them down as flat as you can. And now I'm going to come in with another green pick. This one definitely has a more fall look to it. And I just love the colors contrast with the yellow and then the really bright, not fall green leaves. So now I'm going to take my apples. And at this point, I love how much we've built up all the greenery that it's ready for the apples. I'm going to go ahead and take a skewer stick and poke that into the apple, because these have a sleek surface and over time they're just going to pop right off. So I went ahead and put a skewer stick in it and hot glued those all together, and then I'm going to add more hot glue to the stick and then put it into the wreath. This is going to allow it to really bond and adhere to all of the stuff on the wreath and the ribbon so that these apples don't pop off and fall. And then the very last thing, I decided to do a black and white gingham bow, and I think this turned out so beautiful for the fall. I cannot wait to hang it up. I almost passed up this tray, but I had Calvin with me on this day and he said, hey, what about this? This is round and this is orange. We were looking for particular items for this video and I said, you know what? That would make the cutest pumpkin. So I picked it up thanks to his recommendation and his keen eye for catching, and I almost missed it. Definitely take a friend with you when you thrift shop because sometimes you can find some cool things through the perspective of someone else. So I'm just going to take this cut down painter stick and I'm going to put some hot glue, wood glue, and then 2 staples on it so that I can make a handle on it. Now I thought that this would be cute, the 2 different tones of these woods, and now I'm sketching on with my pencil, Hello Fall. I thought that that would be a really cute thing to put on and turn this into a pumpkin sign. Orange is actually my favorite color because it just is so happy and bright, and I really do just love color so much. So now I'm taking my time and I'm just hand painting on where I sketched out those letters, and once that was done and dry, I'm going to go ahead and take a whole bunch of ribbon, all different kinds and colors going with the theme that I'm doing for these colors, and I'm going to just tie some of them, glue on some of them, pinch some of them so they have all different layers to it. And then in the very center, I'm going to just add a simple star button because I love adding buttons to ribbons. I know it's a problem that I have, but I love buttons so much. I actually collect them. And now I'm going to just add a couple more ribbons to the back to make sure it's nice and full and chunky, because the more ribbons, the better. I really just love how it finishes that look and makes it just look more luxurious with all that ribbon on there. And then the last to hang it up, I'm just going to take one more ribbon and glue it towards the top so I can hang it up on a wreath hook, and that completes this look for just a couple of bucks. For this DIY project, I am using 4 sticks that are long from outside. These come down all the time from our tree, and I just save them, the long skinny ones that are straight as possible. And I'm going to be using some yarn and some zip ties from the Dollar Tree. I love projects like this because, well, they're pretty much pennies to make, and it has such a fun impact for holiday decor. So what I'm doing is I've got all of my long sticks out separate to create the start of the spider web. I'm taking the zip ties, I'm going in between each joint that is opened like a V, and I'm zip tying all of them so they're nice and strong. Then I'm going to take a long piece of the yarn and I'm going to just wrap it around to conceal and hide all of those zip ties. Now this is the back side, so you're not going to see those, but the front side is all nice and covered. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking my yarn, I'm going across the twig, wrapping under and coming back up, going to the next one, wrapping around the top of it, coming under, and then I'm going to go over to the next one. And I'm going to just continue to do that all the way around all of these 4 sticks, that when they're out in a circle they actually make 8 legs. Then I'm going to, when I get to the end of making that first circle, I shift up just a little bit, ever so slightly, and I keep doing that as I'm coiling all the way around. I never break my yarn. I just keep coiling and shifting up a little bit further each time, and then I wrap it around and go to the next one, wrap it around, go to the next one. Now when you get to the end and you decide how big you want it to be, you're going to go ahead and take your yarn, cut the end, and then you're going to take the end and loop it around and do a little slip knot. And then I'm going to just take some hot glue and put a little dollop of it on it to make sure that's locked into place. And then the extra of the yarn, we're going to want to cut that off just to make sure it has a nice clean finished look. Then what we're going to do is we're going to shorten some of those branches so they're not too long. For the thicker branches, I'm just using my wire cutters to dig down in there, and then I put my hand on it, it'll snap pretty easy. The smaller ones snap without a problem. Then to complete the look, I added on 4 little spiders, and it was ready to hang up on my front door. We are going to be using the largest wreath form size that we can find, and I believe it's a 16 or 18 inch from the Dollar Tree, and a whole bunch of different florals. Now almost every single thing came from the Dollar Tree except for this yellow flower, this little tiny wispy yellow flower. Everything else came from the Dollar Tree. So I'm going to start by popping off all of these whimsy flowers, these yellow ones, because I like to have something light and airy on the outer and inner part of my ring, and I'm going to show you what I mean. I start by first layering on something very dainty and flowy on the outside, and I forgot to mention I did wrap around a ribbon. I just coiled it all around and glued it into place. Once I have that whimsy wispy flower on the outside, I'm now going to come in with a very creamy carnation, and again, this is from the Dollar Tree, these creamy carnations. I'm just going to glue those sporadically around, and then I'm going to come in. These flowers were put out for the fall 2021 season. I love that they had that burgundy color inside, so I added some of those. Then I'm going to come in with this burlap orange flower. I thought that this was just so beautiful, and it added in that beautiful fall orangey color. Now I'm adding in some burlap hydrangea. I thought that this was really beautiful, and you can see at this point that it's really starting to come to life, and you could technically stop at these colors, but I'm going to continue to take it a little bit further because I love playing with colors and I love trying to get that look in my house. So once I've got those hydrangeas in there, I'm now going to come in with my leaves. These leaves, I loved the color of them. I loved that it had a yellow undertone to them. It looked very much so like a leaf you would see at the fall time. So I'm going to fill in some of those areas. I think the thing with wreaths, for me personally in particular, I like to make sure that the color is well balanced like you would see in a garden. I want everything to look natural and beautiful as much as possible. Now this is where the surprise color is going to come in, and it's going to match that burgundy in those flowers we put on earlier. I'm going to add on 3 little clusters, and each one has 3 flowers within those clusters of this red peony flower. And now I'm going to add on the white sunflowers. There's a large and a small one that they have at the Dollar Tree, and it really just starts to bring everything to life. Now make sure you always remove all of your hot glue gun strings, because that is a thing. It makes it look like it was homemade. When you remove them, it makes it look more high-end. Now I'm going to come in with some pine cones and some little grains. I think that these are like wheat sticks. I'm not sure. Again, the Dollar Tree. And then the last flower I'm going to be adding on is this leaf that comes off of the pick that has pumpkins. You can see some of the pumpkins are in there too, and this leaf. So I'm just going to tuck all of that down in there and really just make sure that each thing has its own shiny moment. And at the very last finishing touch, I'm going to add on a beautiful bow off to the side that won't compete with the colors, and I love how it turned out. This craft, we're going to be taking a large pizza pan from the Dollar Tree, a metal welcome word sign from the Dollar Tree, some boxwood greenery from Hobby Lobby, and then some greenery from the Dollar Tree. And by the way, these red peonies are my favorite that they had come out this season. They are so beautiful. I've been using them very sparingly, and they are going to be used on this, and I always am so reluctant anytime I ever get them out because I just think, oh, I'm going to run out, and they're like my favorite. So here I am with my Crocodile. You saw me punching some holes. I love the Crocodile tool just because it goes through metal. And once I had those holes all in place where I needed them to, I took out the metal word and the pizza pan outside, and I spray painted them both to make it look nice and high end. And then once I was done with that, I'm going to take some of the garland. I took 2 long strands that would make that curve long enough, and then I zip tied them right to the pan. This is going to make sure that nothing falls off, because friends, I don't trust hot glue on metal. It's just always going to come off. I really like things to look high end and not fall apart when you put them out, especially on your front door. So once I've got that on, I ended up gluing in the berries, some of the boxwood. It's really amazing how when you put on these boxwood stems with that garland greenery from the Dollar Tree, how it just really elevates the look of it. I really love combining different greeneries like that. I think it looks so beautiful. Now I'm taking a ribbon and I'm cutting the tails, and I'm just gluing those down into place, and then I'm going to add on my bow and glue all that down, fluff it out the way that you want it to look, and then I'm going to take some of those red peonies and I'm going to glue 2 of them down lower and then 1 up higher in around the bow, because we're going to add 1 more bow on top of this tan bow. So once you've got all of those glued into place, I'm going to move on, let all that dry for a second, and move on to the word welcome for the front of our sign or our wreath that we're making. And I'm just going to add in some E6000. That's going to really hold it down, and then that hot glue is going to just keep it in place while it continues to dry. Now I wanted to rough up the edges just a little bit because I did like that it had that metally shiny look coming through that gray spray paint. So now I'm going in with some E6000, and you don't have to do this part if glitter is not your thing, but I thought it looked like frost on the pan. I thought this made it look really cute, and it took it from it looking like a pizza pan to looking more like an intentional home decor piece. So I added on some E6000. I'm adding on lots of glitter just so it makes sure it catches all over, and I'm tapping it down to make sure it's just really worked in there. And then I'm going to shake it all off. And then once that's all drying, I went ahead and got 1 more bow that was a gingham bow to add right in the middle. Thank you so much for watching this video today. Let me know which month was your favorite down below in the comments. I'm so grateful for you for stopping by and being my friend here on my channel. If you're new, I would love it if you considered and click that subscribe button. And please do remember to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help my channel. I'm also going to recommend a couple of videos right here at the end. If you enjoyed this one, you might enjoy one of these as well. Until the next episode, bye friends.